All right, guys. I mean, we're coming off a Thanksgiving holiday. I mean, the Lions, Bears, we're going to be talking about that in a little bit. But in general, the holidays, I know, Jared, you were working. How'd yours go, Matt? We'll start with you.
Well, I had to work too. I went over to Tennessee. I think I mentioned it last
Yeah.
week. I went over to Tennessee Wednesday, Thursday, so I was able to have a couple days with the family. But then I flew back Friday to work Friday, Saturday. Anymore, I mean, we've talked about it. Sports has taken over holidays, whether it's Thanksgiving, Christmas. I mean, there's always been football on Thanksgiving, but now there's football all day. There's football all day Black Friday. There's NBA going on the whole weekend, college basketball, obviously. So I mean, anyone out there who's thinking of getting into the sports broadcasting business, just know weekends, nights, holidays. That's a big part of working in the business. So,
Oh yeah.
but yeah, it was good to get away for a couple of days and spend some time with family. So that was definitely a good time. Ate a ton of food, obviously, and
Oh yeah.
watched that Lions win that we'll talk about in a little bit.
That was huge. We had a great time down at my brother George's in Goshen, Indiana. It was awesome. I mean, the food was incredible. They had a great spread. Sorry to make you jealous here, Jared, but it was a great time. The funny story though, this is one of my two stories I got here in catch up. We're watching the Lions, right? And we're just tuned into it. We got his little TV room jam packed with us watching the tail end of that game. And we're down to the final 2 minutes. All of a sudden, this guy, probably around my age, and this lady come up to the front porch and knock on the door. So George answers the door. They come in. George says, "Hey guys, you care if Joe Blow here watches the end of the game? He's a Bears fan."
Oh, geez.
They didn't have a TV at the house next door, right? So he comes in right in the prime time of the game, and we're all just hooting and hollering. He's sitting down in the middle of us when that last play happened.
Oh, geez.
Well,
can you imagine that?
It's like something out of like a family vacation movie or something like that. Okay,
so the poor guy's sitting there with all of us Lion fans. He's watching it. It looks like the Bears going to pull out the win, and all of a sudden, it's just like his throat's cut. Right? He's just gutted. And he got up with his head down and walked out the door.
Should have stayed in his house where there was no TV. It would have been more enjoyable.
Right. But I do have a story, a holiday type of story that I'm sure Jared's going to jump all over me being a boomer to even consider this. But I'm on Facebook, right? And there's this Owasso Corunna marketplace. And you guys know I've been trying to get tickets for the Polar Express, right? To take the grandkids on the ride.
It's your holy grail. You'll never get it. You keep
exactly. And for people out there that don't live in this area, the Polar Express, the steam engine in that movie is based on this steam engine right in our town. And they take excursions up to Santa's Village every year. It's a huge thing. People come from all over the country. So anyway, there's 5 tickets for sale on this marketplace. Wow. And I needed 6. So I'm communicating back and forth through Messenger. And I talked to my wife and I said, well, maybe one of us can ride up with the grandkids. The other one can ride back, that type of thing. So then I get a message back from this lady. She says, well, some guy wants to buy 2 of them, but I told him I want to sell all 5 at once. Okay. Well, okay. So I was going to pull the trigger. I said, well, show me the tickets or give me a call. So she sent me an email, and I'm telling you guys, this thing looked absolutely real. So I had a little hesitation. So I told my wife, I said, look, I'm going to take a drive into town, go to the 1225, train yard there and talk to the guy. So I go inside, I have my printout of my email. Guy takes one look at it, says, scam. Really? Total scam. And I thought, holy cow, people, this is a public service message. Be careful out there, because I'm not kidding you guys. This looks so real. The communication back and forth seems so real. It just about sucked me in.
Is the Facebook account deleted or is it still there, or can we out this person?
I blocked this person and I reported them to Facebook. I don't know if she's still on. I got a feeling this person's not even in the country, because when I talked to the dude, he said, yeah, there's been some other scams, through MasterCard, American Express. People have actually shown up with this printout and had to be told, sorry, that's no good. Yeah. So I'm walking.
You guys, You guys know I've told the story about how I got scammed going to the Lakers game at Madison Square Garden. I had tickets that looked exact same thing. I mean, they looked like legit tickets. And the minute I went to the booth, the ticket person said, "Nope, those are fake." So, I mean, people know what they're doing when it comes to this stuff. It's a shame to do it in general. It's a shame to do it in general, but especially with something around the holiday season where you're trying to take your grandkids and stuff on this train,
right?
As a big Christmas present. It would be a big family event, and someone's seeing it as a chance to make, a few $100 or whatever. And I mean, give the PSA. Yeah, I guess I did. I got 10 years ago or whenever that was. Don't trust anyone. Basically, is what it comes down to.
Absolutely.
I mean, with anything like that, it could be someone out of the country. It very well could be someone in Owasso that just knows how like big those are. Made a fake Facebook account. Let's see if I can scam one person.
Right.
Make $1,000 or however much it was going to be and call it good. It's really basically everything is too good to be true.
Right.
If someone's going to sell those tickets on Facebook Marketplace, I'm going to guess that's not going to be valid at all, because you would think if someone has tickets, they're going to either use them or they're going to give them to family or friends if they're not.
Right. So that's the PSA.
I'm glad you didn't Venmo them all the money or something like that.
Oh my God, that would have been horrible. Well, the moral of the story is, and the good news is, the director of the 1225, he says, yeah, that's a scam. And I'm walking out the door with my head down going, damn, and then he says, hey, come back in. Takes me down to the office. Somebody had turned in 10 tickets, 10 legit tickets for Amy's going to be in town at the end of the month for our Fattel family Frankenmuth.
Right.
So I'm taking all the grandkids on the 1225 on the 22nd. So that's the good news there. How about
that's awesome. So you got all 10?
Got all 10. And the other thing about that scam, they're $80 tickets.
So the scam actually worked out for you.
It did. It absolutely did.
You wouldn't have gone down there otherwise and got those tickets.
Right.
The engineer of the 1225 said, "This poor soul, I got to give him these tickets or he's going to fall for the next scam out there."
This grandpa's limping around, his head down, Yeah. So it's good news there. Hey, by the way, I should tell everybody this is episode 338 and our basketball special part 2 of the 3 Point Podcast. It's presented by the Memorial Healthcare's Wellness Center. Check out details online at memorialhealthcare.org and the socials at Memorial Healthcare Wellness Center. Also want to thank our starting lineup of partners. They include ALS of Michigan, AZee Branding Solutions, Jacobs Insurance Agency, Kori Associates Real Estate Services, Nelson House Funeral Homes, Rivals Taphouse and Grille, Success Group Mortgage and Servicing, and the Shiawassee County Fair. Anytime you're in any of these places of business, tell them you listen to 3 Point Podcast. We love spreading the word and promoting what they do. Well, we do have a special guest coming up a little later in the show. Lamar University assistant basketball coach and Corunna native Ethan Quinn. It's kind of ironic, guys. Jared and I had a chance to catch up to him and had a really good convo with him. Matt was working some action that night for ESPN. But last week's guest, Rick Wesley, also coached for a time at Lamar. I didn't even catch that when we were talking to him. Did you guys?
I didn't at the time, but when we ran it back, I thought, man, we must be pumping up Lamar hoops quite a bit here.
Yeah, Beaumont, Texas, for sure. Well, we'll have that conversation coming up in a little bit, but we're going to take a break right now and come back with our prep spotlight right after this.
All right, guys. I can
go ahead, Jared.
Start us off here. So I was down at the state finals for Ford Field, and I'll just say, man, 5 running clocks, 8 games blowouts. Closest game was 22 points. I'll bring that back at the very end of this, but I'm going to quickly go through the divisions.
Didn't you say you thought that this might be a weekend with a bunch of close games?
No,
I feel like last week
I don't think I did.
Maybe
I did. I thought
not.
I predicted the other thing.
Yeah, I was going to say I wonder what went the other way, like why all these games turned into blowouts.
I don't know. I'll go through each one of them and give my opinion on what I thought I saw. I'll start with D8. I mean, nothing really to report. Beale City, I mean, they're there every year. This is their 3rd straight title in school history. Drew Block had a great game, 20 rushes, 113 yards, 2 touchdowns. My favorite part of their team, all the coaches have these very sharp Nike Pro Fit Alabama A for Aggies, blue crew necks, very sharp look on the sidelines, but a good program. I mean, we're going to see them again there next year. So congrats to Beale City in D8. In D7, Millington, this was kind of a game I thought was going to be close. Usually D7 is a good game no matter what. Same thing with D8. How rare is a blowout in Division 8?
Right.
Division 7 was a blowout. Millington beat Monroe, St. Mary's Catholic Central. Millington won the award for best uniforms of the weekend. If you saw the Arizona Cardinals yesterday versus the Vikings, it's literally the same exact uniforms, all white, sweet, shiny Cardinal on the side of the helmet, just very, very sharp uniforms. But Millington had 4 really tough linebackers, all of them, 5'10", 5'11", 200 pounds. I'll shout them out real quick. Number 5, Dallas Walsh. Number 4, Cade Ward. Number 11, Brevin Hendricks. Number 2, Logan Myers, who had 2 sacks and 8 tackles. Just looked like the 4 best athletes on the field, and they played with the edge to them. I really liked their squad. But Dallas Walsh was definitely the star. I mean, he had 8 tackles, 120 yards rushing on offense. But most impressive, we interviewed him after the game. You would have thought he's done 50 interviews, post-game interviews. Just an impressive young kid. Shouted out the Millington community, said, look at the crowd. The entire town is here. I was really impressed with him. Moving forward to D6. D6, my God, Lumen Christi is damn good. I mean, Herb Brogan, 14th state title in school history. Also, amazing. They have elite uniforms. I mean, they got the Notre Dame Gold Dome helmets. I'm not sure how. They must cost a fortune, or they have some special dealer. I mean, if I'm Corona, next time we get our helmets refurbished, can we get this shiny look? Why do we have these like flat gold ugly helmets with a cartoon sticker on the side? Look at Lumen Christi, look at Notre Dame Prep. Like, let's get with the 2025 wave.
They used to be shiny in the 90s.
Yeah, and it's like they've lost their luster, man. I used to talk about how majestic those Corona helmets are. Now it's like when you look at Lumen Christi and Notre Dame Prep, you're like, we are way behind in this facet. But this was just an unfair matchup. I mean, you could have played this game 1,000 times. It's a blowout 1,000 times. Lumen Christi, 435 yards in the ground, averaged 11 yards per rush. I love their offense. It's so simple. They're pulling a guard and a tackle every play and just mauling guys on the offensive line. But the star of the show was Kadale Williams, running back. He's heading to Central Michigan. 310 rushing yards. That's the state finals record. He could have ran 500 yards. I'm not even joking you. Final stat line, 27 rushes, 315 yards, 5 TDs. My favorite part, he's like Barry Sanders. He's having this amazing game. You wouldn't know it. He's helping guys up on the other team. Every time he scores, there's no celebration, just handing it off to the ref. I'm sure part of that is Herb Brogan's program. And I just got a kick out of that kid. I just was really impressed. I think he's going to be a very good future Central Michigan Chippewa. Have you guys ever heard of a guy running for 310 yards in a state title? Obviously not. I mean,
do you remember off the top of your head how much Donovan Edwards had? Didn't he go off?
It was in the 200s. I want to say 250. That was probably the best game I've ever seen a running back play at the state finals. But this was just a man among boys is kind of how it felt. Just Lansing Catholic. I know they beat our local teams, Durand and Chesaning, and they're a good squad in their own right. But this was bringing a knife to a gunfight is kind of how it felt. In D5, this was the shocker of the weekend to me. I mean, Ted, you told us how good Notre Dame Prep was.
Now you know.
Game. Yeah. I mean, I really thought this was the Frankenmuth team that was going to kind of get over that Ford Field hump. I mean, they had the usual Frankenmuth talent. On top of that, they have a defensive lineman going to Michigan State, Derek Simmons, who's just an absolute man-child. But Notre Dame Prep, just very, very impressive. Pretty much a college offense.
Yeah.
Their quarterback, Sam Stowe, 15 of 21 passing, 290 yards, 4 touchdowns, hit 8 different receivers. It's like watching a team on a totally different level. And Frankenmuth just was lost on the perimeter. Just really had no chance of shutting them down. I do wonder if the game would have been different. So here's how the game started. Frankenmuth hits a big-time counter for about an 80-yard gain. As the kid is running to the end zone, he switches hands, fumbles. Notre Dame Prep jumps on it. Very next play, 87-yard screen pass, touchdown. And it's easy to brush that aside as you look at the score, like, oh, they would have never been close. But these are high school kids, man. Right. 16, 17 years old. You're at Ford Field. You're gung-ho. You're watching your teammate sprint down the sideline for a touchdown. Literally 1 minute of real-life time later, you're down 7-0.
Right.
It's just hard to overcome that. So it's a shame. I really do love Frankenmuth. I love their team. Phil Martin, I think he runs a great program. But just for whatever reason, they can't get over that Ford Field hump, man. And this was just an ugly game. Notre Dame Prep, I wrote down the coach's name. I really wanted to shout him out. Pat Fox. He's actually a Frankenmuth graduate who commutes every day like hour to Pontiac Notre Dame Prep. He's like the Cliff Kingsbury of MHSAA football. What an impressive offense with these concepts they were running. I was really, really, really impressed. I mean, even if you remember the Corona game from 2 years ago when Corona won, like guys were open, they were dropping passes. They had a couple fumbles that killed them. Like it was a game where you felt like could have went another way if it was played again. Moving on to D4, probably the weakest division, I would say, pound for pound in the entire at all of Ford Field. Goodrich absolutely drubbed Niles. You know how I like to say Michigan mulling somebody to death?
Mm-hmm.
They Chase Burnetted Niles to death. Niles is a cool little squad. They were definitely my favorite heading into the weekend. Triple option. Very cool story where the coach, Scott Shaw, learned this offense from his son, who's an offensive coordinator at Mishawaka High School. On Thanksgiving Day, they actually went to Notre Dame's indoor practice facility. Riley Leonard came and spoke to them. They got to practice there. A lot of really cool stuff, but man, they just ran into a buzzsaw in Goodrich. And Goodrich is coach Tom Allward. I mean, you can't give this guy enough credit. They are so consistent year after year. I think they've had maybe one down year the entirety he's been at Goodrich. They run that power eye, but they do it in a creative way. So, for example, one time, their first 2 drives of the game, first score they had, they ran a play action roll out to the left and hit Max Macklem, who's going to Central Michigan, for a touchdown. Very next drive, they run the same exact action. It's looking like it's going to be a rollout throw to Max Macklem. All of a sudden, they have Chase Burnett leak out to the other side. It's a halfback slip screen. Goes for 50 yards. So although they run power eye, it's amazing how they run so many different things out of similar looks that makes it tough to defend. You would think power eye, just they're running the ball right down your throat. There's a little more to it than that. Moving on to D3, this was the most impressive team I thought I saw all weekend. Zeeland West absolutely killed Detroit MLK. Coach John Shillito, one of the most underrated coaches in the state. I mean, they're so good. They run the wing tee to perfection. The deception on the fakes is incredible. All the guys carry out their fakes 20 yards downfield. But the kid who really impressed me was their fullback. Number 1, Keaton Hendricks. We highlighted this kid in warmups, and I saw him, and he's a tall and frail little guy. And I thought, man, this is their fullback? The kid could run like a deer. He sprung 2 fullback traps to the house, and he also had 3 receiving touchdowns. He set another state record, 6 total touchdowns. That's the state record. But just an impressive kid, man. He was fullback. He was tall. He was frail. Great pass catcher out of the backfield and breakneck speed where he's a long strider where if he got an open field, he was going to house it every single time. Zeeland West, I think, pound for pound, was really the only team in a lesser division that I thought could compete with Cass Tech because MLK beat Cass Tech earlier in the year, and Zeeland West just mauled them in that game. In D2,
Zeeland West, are they the Ducks or the Chicks?
They are the Ducks. Yeah.
DUX.
Damn good squad, man. You can say or watch when they make it to Ford Field, they're going to win that game.
I know. Friend of the pod, Jason Hutton, has been Zeeland West. I think has been his number 1 team all season. I'm pretty sure. Yeah,
it wasn't. I don't know how they slid under my radar. Wow, are they impressive? It is a very good squad, very well coached, tough. Just a good squad. Orchard Lake St. Mary's beat Byron Center in D2. Orchard Lake St. Mary's had a stable of like 4 or 5 running backs that were just studs. For starters, they have Darren Williams, who's Division I commit, and Darren Williams, who's committed to Michigan State, and Bryson Jones, who's another Division I player. They combined for 300 yards on the ground. I really think Williams is going to be a stud for Michigan State. Very versatile. He runs this wing tee offense at Orchard Lake St. Mary's, but I think he's 6 foot, a little bit thinner, could definitely be a good slot receiver as well. Their coach is Jermaine Gonzalez, former All-American at Orchard Lake St. Mary's in the 90s under George Porrett. Went on to Michigan, was a quarterback and an athlete there. I thought he did a great job. Their pre-snap formation changes, motioning, I thought was very creative and clever. And actually, shout out to Alex Newell, former OLC Marauder.
Axel Newell.
Axel Newell, excuse me. Yes, Axel Newell. They don't ask much of him, but the biggest play of the game, 4th and 17, they're about to score a touchdown. He takes a huge shot, completes one of his 2 passes the entire game, takes a big-time shot from a blitzing linebacker, throws a perfect seam route that put the nail in the coffin for that game. And then one thing I want to shout out on Byron Center's side, their quarterback, Langdon Tungate, really impressive kid, just a very good high school quarterback, tough as nails, didn't quit the entire game, just an impressive athlete with his legs and his arms. And he was my kind of guy. I liked everything about him. All right, last one, then I'm done. All right, D1, Cass Tech beat Hudsonville. Cass Tech, 2 impressive studs. CJ Sadler, already been offered by Bama. Alex Graham, free safety, committed to Colorado. He is going to be a stud for primetime at Colorado. He was unbelievably impressive. Just everywhere on the field, offense, defense, took an end around for like 80 yards to the house, had an interception, just an all-time stud. The one thing that was a very confusing to me for Hudsonville, they had their corners playing, I'm not joking you, 15 yards off the line. 15 yards off the line, essentially just daring Cass Tech to hit you for hitch routes. And that's what they did. Cass Tech has a freshman quarterback, Donald Tarbin. He's the next stud. in this state. 15 to 20, 176 yards, 3 tutties. But the thing that cracked me up, so they have a 1st and 10 on the 20-yard line. Hudsonville's corners are standing on the 2-yard line. Cass Tech runs like a little post, throws it right inside this corner, sitting at 15 yards depth for a touchdown. I'm like, what are you protecting? You're standing on your own goal line. You're backing up into the end zone just so they could throw it right underneath you. Like, Hudsonville finally got their kind of act together in the second half. They started dialing up some good trick plays. It just seemed like they were overwhelmed. And I get worrying. I mean, obviously, Cass Tech has the athletes to run by you on the perimeter, but, like, you got to kind of live with that at some point. If you're sitting 15 yards off the ball, 1, you're not helping in run defense. 2, you're not even helping them keep the ball in front of you as they're hitting you for post routes, for touchdowns. It just was a bit of a debacle. I think that they kind of feel like they probably psyched themselves a little bit out in this game. And if it was another rerun, I think it's a different story somewhat. But Cass Tech, just freaking impressive. That's a damn good squad. Anything stick out to you guys out of those 8 games?
I was going to mention, I saw the state records that fell. That's always cool when you see that, individuals or a team, just put up a performance like that.
Yeah, I'd been on that Notre Dame train, and they didn't disappoint. After they pounded our Cavaliers, they showed what they were made out of. I mean, I love their offense as well, excellently coached. And, by the way, Jared, well done. I mean, we started off this high school football season with our prep pigskin preview and come full circle with a great recap there of the state finals. So you were paying attention to what you were doing that couple days, huh?
Yeah, well, yeah. That's your job, son. So
right.
that's what you had to do.
Dad.
Yeah, but it's still a fun weekend. But man, you can't help but walking out of that truck on Saturday night with 5 running clocks, no game close at all, going, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
And I don't want to spend 20 minutes harping on the division thing. We do that every week. It's never going to change. But my God, I mean, we're handing out participation trophies to some of these squads.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be an asshole, but that's the reality. And if we trimmed it down to, Ted, you suggested 6 in the past. I think 4 is the right number. Yeah, less teams are going to make it. Less teams are going to win a state title. But my God, those titles are going to mean something. And the right team are going to make it.
Right.
Like, just some of these games, man, it really was like men among boys.
Right.
I don't know how else to explain it. It's just disappointing.
It could change. I mean, they have changed divisions in the past, but I do think I look at it right now, the way it's set up with 8-player football having to go up to the Superior Dome. And I agree with you on the competition factor on the 8 different divisions. Go to 6. Play the other 2 8-man finals the same weekend. They all get to play at Ford Field where the Lions play, and try that for a few years, see what happens. But it's not working this way.
And the thing is it would probably work out just fine. There'd be a couple years where, some people are complaining about it because maybe they would have made the playoffs in the old system and they don't make it. But like eventually it would work out. And I do think it would help with the matchups at Ford Field.
Right.
Because, you get some cool stories like Niles or some of those other teams you were talking about, Jared, but it's kind of like, but once they get to the finals against some of these powerhouse programs, they're just overmatched. So.
And is it worth it to get embarrassed at Ford Field?
No.
Like where you have 100 yards of total offense? Who's winning in that situation?
Right.
You know what's better? Niles knocking off a division, whatever the new divisions would be, a Division II size school in districts, because they are a good squad. Maybe they're not a squad that's going to be at Ford Field. I'm not trying to be a jerk to Niles.
Right.
But like, for example, Goodrich got shut out by Franken.
Right.
And so it's like, the divisions are like Division IV as a whole. Country Day isn't what they used to be. GRCC dropped to Division V. Mm-hmm. MLK is technically Division IV, but they play up in Division III because it's like if they win that title, they look around and go, wow, what did we really even accomplish?
Right.
So we have the 8 divisions. Think about Saginaw and Arthur Hill are combined. Flint, I saw an old video of it from the 1930s. There used to be 15,000 people watching Flint Northern versus Central on Thanksgiving Day. You can't even field a high school in Flint anymore.
Right.
What are we doing with the same rules we had in those days in a time where we have half the enrollment we used to have as a state? This is the result. But anyway, let's move on because it is awesome seeing those champions get crowned, and all those teams are damn good that hoist a trophy. It's just a shame that we don't get good games.
No, I think I think we're all probably on board with what you're saying. Wasn't it Coach Crockett, Morris's head coach, when we talked to him? He said he agrees with what we're saying, but he didn't think that the MHSAA would ever do it just because that would be less teams making the playoffs, and they want more involvement. So,
well, it's a problem, and we'll see what happens. And again, good breakdown, Jared. While we're on the topic of high school football, the big story here locally, for you people, listening out of the area, we have a local high school, Durand, that had a little controversy on the field in one of their games this year. To kind of set the stage, and maybe you can help me out if I'm missing something here. They're playing a local team, Bath, and one of the Durand players, way opposite across the field from the Durand sideline, got popped really hard, and he came up, and apparently he was wobbly, right? So one of the teammates said, "Hey, coach, got to get him out of here." And people in the stands were yelling at the coaching staff. So they brought the kid over the sideline. The training staff took a look at him, and he went back to the coach and says, "Hey, man, I just had the wind knocked out of me. Put me back in." Coach put him back in for one play. And then there was still an uproar from the stands. And then also, I think a couple players maybe had said something. So they pulled him out of the game. I believe he sat the rest of the game, right? So
that's my understanding, yes.
That set the stage, okay? And after that, apparently, one of the parents of one of the other players, not the parents of the player that was injured, but some other player's parent, got a hold of the superintendent. And you can see what's happening. They raised a ruckus, and now it's become a firestorm. And it's already come to a special school board meeting last week, where they had all these people from Durand community members speaking at the microphone to the school board. Pretty much 90, I think probably almost 100% were backing the coach. And by the way, John Webb, a former guest on this show, enjoyed talking with him, has turned that program around on the win-loss department, had an undefeated 9-0 season a couple years ago, had a winning record this year. So they have another school board meeting going on tonight. We're recording this on Monday night. So anyway, it's on social media. Everybody's in an uproar, and I'm just going to give you my opinion without knowing every bit of the facts. I saw the 13-page report where they, the principal of schools interviewed, some players, some other people, some coaches, but just knowing what I know and knowing how these things should be handled. Let's just say, for example, Coach Webb maybe didn't handle it the proper way. Let's just say that, okay? Hypothetically. Is it the end of the world? I mean, no. Is it grounds to be fired just by your superintendent, not getting any input from the athletic director, the principal? Now, I understand there was some conflict of interest there with some relatives. I get that. But isn't this a matter where the athletic director, the coach, and if the superintendent is the one that has to be involved, since one of the parents involved them, don't you have like a meeting like a closed door meeting and say, "Hey, Coach Webb, we cannot tolerate this. If there's a potential concussion, you have to handle it properly." And I'm not even saying he didn't, but you just got to remind him, even if you have to write him up and say, "Hey, I have to put this in your record.
Right.
Don't do it again." Isn't that the way to handle it?
It's an overreaction.
You would think the phrase paid administrative leave, that you hear a lot of times, like firing him right away. Again, we maybe don't know all the facts. We'll find out some more as all these meetings happen and stuff like that. But waiting until letting cooler heads prevail. All right, some people are reporting this. We know what happened on tape. He's even released a video explaining his side. Put him on leave. Let's have some meetings. Let's let some people talk about it, and then let's go talk to Coach Webb. And if it does get to the point where he did really drop the ball, okay, maybe a firing is justified. But if it's like, no, actually, the kid was medically cleared, and as far as Coach Webb knew, he was good to go, and maybe he did handle it, and maybe a suspension would be warranted or something like that. But it does seem like the superintendent jumped the gun a little bit with a firing, because now that as we're hearing some more of the facts and details come out, it doesn't seem like Coach Webb knew the kid was potentially concussed and just threw him back in the game. You know what I mean? It reminds me of Jared. I mean, Ted, you probably remember too, Jared, before you jump in. It reminds me of back in when Brady Hoke was at Michigan, and there was the quarterback there, Shane Morris. I think it was against Minnesota. He got blasted and got picked up off the turf and was definitely wobbly and, whatever. continued to play, and then did end up coming out because it was clear something was wrong. And so obviously everyone's blasting Brady Hoke. How are you letting this happen? How are you letting this happen? And Brady Hoke's defense basically was like, the kid was, I can't see everything that happened. I mean, he was medically cleared. He was out there, people think these coaches can see every single thing and know every single thing that happens. And sometimes that's just not how it works in sports, so it's a shame that it's gotten to this point. Hopefully the kid is okay, first and foremost, but then to jump the gun and fire a coach that was really doing some good things for the community is also a shame.
Yeah, I remember Durant actually in the past. They were so bad in football, basketball, and I remember they finally got some life. Jeff Long was a basketball coach for them, and I remember he got fired, and it was a whole hellstorm. Basically, he got fired because he was like swearing on the sideline, I think is what the reason was. So it's like it's an overreaction. This does not, to me, seem like, from my understanding of how this went down, it does not seem like Coach Webb said to this kid, "Oh, you just got your bell rung. Get back out there." Like, it seems like it was kind of a confusing situation. The kid seemed fine to him. Like, apparently he mentions in his video that this kid wobbled. I still haven't seen this other video that shows this bad wobbling. I couldn't tell from his video this kid wobbling or whatnot. And then they call a timeout. He goes out there for one more play, doesn't get any contact. They call a timeout. The players tell him, "Hey, you got to take him out." He takes him out. He's out the rest of the game.
Right.
Was it a perfect situation? Do you wish he didn't go back out there for one more play? Yeah. Is it worth firing? And we're seeing the hellstorm that's come from this. Clearly, I think the majority of the support is behind him in Durant. It just was an overreaction. If you want to just say you did something, suspend him for a game, okay, great. If you want to ream him in your office, great. It just seemed jump to conclusions a little bit.
Yeah, and it also, I've been around the block a few times. You can tell by all the gray hair I have. There's more things behind it. It's the whole political thing. There's parents. I mean, when you look at something like this, and it's not the father of the player that's lodging the complaint, it's somebody else. And it makes me think, and again, I don't know all the facts, but it makes me think, well, I wonder if he's getting the playing time he should or something, and the parents got a vendetta. So they're going to go directly to the superintendent. Again, that's 100% speculation, but I've seen it before. I've seen it many, many times. Yep. And this is just my editorial comment when it comes to that. Okay. When I was young, all right, my dad would never, ever interfere with a coach. He'd say, he'd be on my side if I'd come home whining about something, but he would never get a hold of the coach. And my message to any kids out there, you don't deserve a spot if you don't earn it. If you might be upset at the coach, but you don't cry to mommy and daddy to have them go get a hold of the administrator and get you playing time. What you do is you work your ass off and you earn that spot.
To be fair, I'm not sure if that's who knows if that did happen. I mean,
well, I'm not saying it did, Jared. I'm just saying that's an example of some.
Right. It's just sad. I mean, like you said, he's done a good job as the coach. From the outside looking in, it really seems like he's done a good job. I mean, Durant couldn't win a football game forever. Now they're 9-0. It was like the story of the season across the state when they did that a couple years ago. Yeah. And I'm with you. It's like, I lost my train of thought. I got so many different thoughts going.
It's a tough situation because, I mean, Ted, you're talking about, your generation, right? And I forget if it was Jared or Ted. One of you said about the bell rung type of thing. We all played football. Jared, you're a little younger than us, but I mean, you definitely remembered. Ted, definitely back in your day.
I'm sure I had a concussion one time.
Right. Shake off the cobwebs. You get back out there. By the time you were playing, Jared, concussions were more. We were more aware of what concussions were and stuff like that. Sure. So you can see both sides to that situation alone. If they really think the kid had a concussion and Coach Webb didn't care, put him back out there, that's a whole other discussion.
100%.
If Coach Webb didn't see what happened and was told by the staff that he was cleared, I think you need to then put that on the medical staff. I mean, if Ted, you said that it hasn't been reported that the kid actually had a concussion. So he obviously, maybe it was just a bell rung situation. Can
they tell a concussion? I mean, I'm not a doctor, but can they tell 2 or 3 days later? Because that's when he went to the doctor.
They can. It depends on, the degree of the concussion. Sometimes it even it gets worse because that's why sometimes if you have it, they don't want you to go to sleep and stuff like that. If you really do have something going on. So, I mean, if the kid's symptoms lingered for a couple days, then yes, they could tell. So, that's where jumping to a firing makes this tough, because it's like, let's hear what happened. Let's hear from the medical staff. What happened when the kid came in the sidelines? Did you do a concussion test? Did you just ask him, you okay? Yep. Okay. Go back out there. Because if that's the case, you need to have a discussion with your medical staff, because as we know nowadays, concussions are the biggest thing ever. I mean, in the NFL, if a dude gets hit, he's out of the game immediately, and he goes under the blue tent, and they're doing test after test after test. So if that's the case, then you need to have a discussion with the medical staff. And as a head coach, if your medical staff says, kid's good, yeah, we did the test and looks good, what are you to do? You're going to put him back out there. And then if players and stuff like that see that clearly something's wrong, you pull him back out, which Coach Webb did. So you can see both sides in that sense. That's where the facts needed to come out before you fired him, because it's like,
when did this happen?
If you did a concussion test and he was cleared, what else are you supposed to do? If you didn't do a concussion test, that's a whole different conversation.
Right. I don't know, Jared. The first I caught wind of it was Friend and Community News, a Facebook blog post here, and then all hell's broken loose since then.
Here's the shame. I don't think he's going to get his job back. I heard the athletic.
I don't know how you can at this point.
Yeah, now it's like it's a battle, and both sides probably digging in.
Oh, lawyers are involved.
I think he's a good coach. I thought he was doing a really good job there. And one thing I thought was kind of funny about this whole situation, I don't know how else you're supposed to find out any more info about what happened other than doing what they did, but it's still kind of funny reading what some of these players are saying. Like you just mentioned it, Ted. Basically, it's like, a lot of times on any team I played on, even the good ones, probably still 60% of the team was not happy with either playing time or this or that, and they didn't like the coach. So now you're like giving them an anonymous way to basically get this guy fired.
Yep.
Right.
And it's like, I don't know. It just rubs me the wrong way. I don't know what to.
Well, it's the same thing. Now these are 15, 16-year-old kids. They're not even legal adults. So it's kind of like that's a whole other side. Like you can't. This isn't grown adult people that you're interviewing. So I don't know if you can even use their name in your reporting. I don't know the legal side of that. But it shouldn't. Right. And you probably shouldn't, if 16-year-old kid. So you probably shouldn't even be interviewing them, really, is what it comes down to. If you're going to leave them as anonymous, you probably shouldn't even be interviewing them. But it reminds me of when Jim Harbaugh was going through all that stuff at Michigan, and there were all those reports from anonymous Big Ten coaches giving their opinions. And it's like, if you're going to give your opinion on this, put your name on it. If you're really going to say Jim Harbaugh should be fired for what he did, put your name on it. If you're being anonymous, that you don't have any backbone. If you're telling a head coach he should be fired, put your name on it so we can ask you, why do you think he should be fired? Because that we all played sports. I mean, yes, there's bias, especially in small towns. There's going to be some bias. There's going to be some politics. There's going to be some, like you said, there's some, family issue, all that kind of stuff going on. So,
and that's why, it's just a shame, man. You wish it didn't happen.
Yep.
It was totally
now it is. If it kind of ends up that coach, who wants to coach there now? You know what I mean? Like you got to step in and coach. What kind of players are you going to have? Are the players going to break out? Right.
And then players maybe not because of the coach, but they're like, I mean, seems like the majority of the players are coming to this guy's defense.
Absolutely.
So what a shitty situation.
Totally shitty, and Durand has always been one of, when I grew up, man, they were our top rival, but you hate to see this, they're a lot of great people over there, and they had finally turned their program around, and it's just a sad thing to see it come to this. So we had to have at least our commentary on it. We don't know all the facts, but we laid out what we know. We'll wrap this segment up, boys, with some high school basketball, November basketball, boys basketball. Last week we had Durand, the Railroaders, ironically enough, down in Clio, 72-41. Jacob Nebo had 21 to lead the way there, and they've got a pretty good little basketball program going in Durand now too. New Lothrop down Burton Atherton 52-26. Brady Coleman had 13 points, 8 assists. Perry Ramblers get a W. They now Burton Bentley 71-57. Anthony Cochran 19 points in that one. Got to send a shout out to Owasso's Lillian Pumford at the swimming state final. She finished 4th in the state in the 100-yard butterfly, school record for Lillian. So congratulations to her. Nice. That is the Prep Spotlight presented by Jacobs Insurance Agency, and stay tuned. We'll see what comes out of the Railroad City down the road. We'll be back, take a look at Michigan. We're just chomping at the bit to talk about the Wolverines, talk a little Lions, and put this pot away right after this. All right, guys, all I have to say is the game. I mean, Jared, unfortunately, you had to work. You didn't get to dive into the whole thing, but you did, I'm sure, watch the replay, watching it live. One of the most incredible football games I have ever seen.
It really was. I mean, for a 13-10 final score, it was one of the more satisfying games to watch because you knew the result by the time you actually watched the game, Jared. But I don't know about you, Ted. I think from the first kickoff, from the first drive or two, you could sense that Michigan had control of the game. I mean, you could just sense that. I mean, Joel Klatt was saying over and over, like, Ohio State's advantage is on the edges with those receivers. And Ryan Day was so insistent, and Chip Kelly, on running the ball. They had to establish their toughness. And we all knew Michigan has the best defensive line in the country. Why are you running right at them? Like, what are you doing? And it just felt like, even though Mullings ended up having a really good day, but he wasn't busting off 15, 20, 30. It was a little 3-yard gain, 4-yard gain. Donovan Edwards gets hurt, so he's out of the game. But it just felt like Michigan had it. It was like they were controlling the clock. Ohio State only had one drive in the first quarter.
Right.
And, I mean, Michigan was just like driving slow. Davis Warren was hitting a couple little passes that he needed to. Didn't have a great game by any means. But, like, it just – watching that game, as the game kept going, I was like, they might win this game. And then it got to the second half, third quarter, fourth quarter. I was like, they're about to pull this thing off, and I couldn't believe it. But it was so fun to watch.
Full disclosure, I'll let Jared jump in, but full disclosure, after that first Ohio State possession, I think they went ahead 3-0, didn't they?
Yeah.
And then, I was having some doubts, but until Michigan went ahead 7-3 in the way they did it, that's when I turned. That's when I said, you know what? They could win this game. And wow. They played perfectly. Ryan Day coached a ridiculously stupid game. I mean, it's just unbelievable how terrible he is. And, I think we got the Bryce Underwood factor carried over 2 weeks in a row. I mean, they got that juice against Northwestern and said, hey, you know what? We can be a pretty good football team. And then if they're playing their hated rivals, they took care of business. I mean, I know you guys probably look back to maybe 96 or the 90s. Maybe some games there that would compare with Michigan, Ohio State, but I go all the way back to 69. It's an almost identical carbon copy. First year head coach going in an unwinnable game against the first or second team in the nation, and then stuns them. And I think Bo's team in 69 was a 17-point underdog. This one was what, 20, 21?
20, yeah.
At the Horseshoe.
We called it last week.
Yeah.
I mean, we really did. We didn't say they were going to win the game, but we said the 20-point spread was a joke. We knew it was going to be a tough game. We knew that we had the defensive line that was going to show up. We knew that Michigan was going to be game planning for this for weeks, which it really seemed like they did. Wink Martindale had his best game as a defensive coordinator, that's for sure. Ryan Day definitely helped. And we knew that Horseshoe was going to be a disadvantage if it's a close game come second half. I mean, I saw Ohio State didn't get a first down for the last 20 minutes of gameplay. As soon as that butthole tightened in that stadium, it was game over. It was game over. It was sweet. And full disclosure, I didn't watch it live. I watched the last 2 minutes live. I watched the entire full game replay with a smile on my face that day. I loved it, man. I freaking loved it. I mean, Mason Graham, just a Michigan man. He played the game of his lifetime, just tough as nails. Just hard not to love all. Sharon Moore laid it out perfectly. Offensive line played great. He named each of those defensive linemen by name. These guys are Michigan men. They're the reason we won this game. 4 straight. And it really looked like it mentally broke Ohio State. The fans, the team, the coach. I mean, the melee. Let's talk about the melee. I mean, fortunately, that was the story.
Yeah.
You guys remember weeks ago, I had a big time problem with Michigan and the Michigan State melee because I thought Colston Loveland was essentially instigating like he wanted a melee to break out. This game, this just felt like a pure, clean, fun rivalry. I mean, look at the pregame videos. Michigan is walking in, and the entire Ohio State sideline is chirping them like mad dogs. Jack Sawyer, the main culprit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they were asking for this. And
Yep.
if in something as stupid as planting a flag should not rile you up that much.
Right.
It bothers you as much as you let it bother you.
Right.
And everyone's saying the whole, oh, they should have settled it on the field. That's easy to say, and yes, it's true. I also somewhat see Ohio State's side of things where it's like, you might have beat us, but you're not going to plant that goddamn flag.
Right.
And this is why people act like this was the most abhorrent thing they've ever seen. This was football. This is college football at its core, what we saw in that post game. You know who really blew it? Gus Johnson.
Yeah.
What is he talking about? Like, we don't need to hear you wax poetic. No, call it like you're calling a game. Whoa, they just snagged the flag. They just got rid of it. Like, why do we take this shit so seriously?
Right.
Like, it's fun. It's teenagers. It's kids. They're playing their balls off, and they have a little bit more juice left in the tank after the game for some shoving. It's not like a Malice at the Palace broke out.
Right.
Some shoving. A flag was planted. A flag was ripped down. The crowd loved it when they ripped down the flag. I thought that was awesome. That's college football. That's rivalry. That's the game. Did you guys have a problem with either side of what went down there? Obviously, Ohio State looked like an idiot.
Yeah.
Last thing I'll say, and then I'll pass it back to you guys. If Michigan plants that flag, you could argue we look like a bunch of like assholes. But because of how Ohio State reacted, they look like the assholes.
Right.
If they had just let us do it, and they walk in the locker room and we look like sore winners, whatever you want to call it, that could have been a side of the story. But how they reacted and how much it bothered them, if I'm Sharon Moore, I'm saying I'm glad you guys planted that fucking flag. That's how I view it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the rivalry part of Michigan Ohio State, there's bad blood deeper than any other rivalry in sports, really. But people have pointed this out a number of times. When Texas beat Michigan at the Big House this year, when Oregon beat Michigan at the Big House this year, both of those teams did the same thing, and a fight didn't break out. Texas ran to midfield, boom, flag. Oregon ran to midfield, boom, flag at the Big House, and Michigan just walked off the field. Maybe there was some trash talk, but it didn't turn into what it did on Saturday. And I understand, the Ohio State players taking offense to it, sure, but making it seem like the cops going out there with pepper spray and like criminal charges need to be happening and stuff like that. It's like, no, like as long as nobody was getting seriously hurt, it was a bunch of shoving, whatever it is. It's a rivalry that boiled over to a little melee. Gus Johnson acting like this is the worst thing to happen to college football. It's a black eye on a great rivalry and stuff like that. It's like, dude, settle down. Now, if there were legit fights and guys were getting seriously hurt, that's different. But that didn't happen.
Remember when I talked about the legendary Bob Costas? Well, I think Gus Johnson was in the same situation in that game. I mean, there was something going on with him. Now, I'm not just talking at the end of the game. He was missing calls. He was missing yard lines where the ball went out of bounds and stuff. I mean, I don't know what was going on with him.
Matt,
he
you
seemed
sent
a little
us that.
off.
What was it? The Sawyer interception where he was what the hell was that?
He just, I don't know if his voice, I don't know, does he have a cold or something and he lost his voice? But yeah, that Sawyer interception,
oh my God,
you couldn't even hear what he was saying. There was a play earlier where I think it was a Michigan tight end caught a ball like 4 or 5 yards short of the first down line. And he said, like, let's see if they give him the spot to get the first down. And everyone's like, he's like 5 yards short. What are you talking about?
No, dude.
He seemed a little off.
I like Gus Johnson. But my God, I like, think about it. He's a Michigan man. He went to U of D Jesuit for high school. We know he likes Michigan.
Right.
I wonder, me reading between the lines, okay, Sharon Moore, new head coach. They've done a few games this year, Texas game notably, probably railroaded Michigan on that broadcast. I don't know. I didn't listen to it back. If I had to guess, Sharon Moore probably doesn't like Gus Johnson very much. And so now Gus Johnson's changing his tune a little bit on how he calls these Michigan games. What the hell was the call? Oh, they didn't cheat this time.
Right.
What is going on? Like, what? Again, I like both of them, Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson. They blew it at the end of that game.
Yeah. Well, Joel was trying to keep Gus in check. Like when the melee was happening, Joel was kind of like, Baker Mayfield did it, and like it's happened before.
Right.
He was trying to be like, whatever. But no, it's a shame that became a big story because the game it was so enjoyable to watch. I mean, you talked about Mason Graham. There's so many. I mean, Davis Warren, you have to say, even though he didn't have a great game, He's a Michigan legend for going into the horseshoe and winning that game. He threw 2 interceptions. The one interception.
That one. Oh my God.
Quite possibly the worst interception. I mean, Jared, you could have thrown that touchdown pass. I mean, he they were down on the goal line. Everyone was saying the same thing. Run Mullings. Mullings is doing the job. Run it. I wasn't mad at that play call because it was executed so perfectly.
I wasn't either.
The dude was wide open, and he did the fake perfectly. I think he just you talked about butthole puckering up. I think he just short armed it. He was just like, he tried instead of like Ted, you played baseball.
Sure.
You don't just like toss the ball over there. You got to throw it. You have to throw the ball, and I think he just kind of like, and Sawyer was right there. There were multiple times,
and they came back from that. That was what even was more impressive.
And his other interception was on like the 10-yard line, and they still came back from that. So. It was the ultimate. I mean, I think Michigan, people saying like Michigan didn't win this game. It was a complete choke job by Ryan Day and the Ohio State kicker and, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, sure, that was a factor. But Michigan won that game. Right. I mean, Michigan's offense did what they had to do. Michigan's defense, I mean, that Ohio State is full of 5-stars at every position, every year. Every position is a 5-star. And especially this year's Michigan team, I don't even know how many 5-stars they have, maybe 1 or 2. Right. And they just completely manhandled them. And I don't understand Ohio State's insistence and Ryan Day's insistence on wanting to prove how tough they are and establish that run. Everyone knew if you just went out there and threw the ball 50 times, you're probably going to win that game because Michigan's secondary was so banged up. Right. Maybe they were scared of the pressure that Michigan's D-line could have created, but it's impressive. So there's the stat that's been flying around there. The team in that rivalry that has rushed for the most yards in the game has won that game since 2000 every year. Wow. And Jim Harbaugh figured it out. I mean, when he came in and Urban Meyer had that train rolling, Michigan had a couple of good teams in those early years with Jim Harbaugh, but they couldn't beat Ohio State. Couldn't figure it out. Jim Harbaugh said, we got to get tougher. We got to get better offensive linemen. We got to get running backs. I mean, Donovan Edwards had his days for sure, but we got to get running backs like Blake Corum, Khalil Mullings. We got to get these dudes that we can hand the ball. Khalil had, I think, 32 carries. Like we got to get a guy that we could just hand the ball to, lineman that can just knock dudes over, because the stat is in the four-game winning streak, Michigan has 878 yards rushing. Ohio State only has 391 rushing yards in that 4-game win streak. I mean, they're basically doubling them up in rush yards in this 4-game win streak. You can have all the 5-star receivers you want. You got to be able to run the ball. And Harbaugh and then now Sherrone Moore, they understand that. And I mean, you can see it. I do want to say, but I wanted to ask you guys, does it worry you? We all love Bryce Underwood. We're all hyped to get Bryce Underwood at Michigan. But now they're starting to try and flip all these 5-stars. They're trying to get all these, 5-star receivers. Are we worried that Michigan is going to lose what Harbaugh has built with this toughness? I mean, Khalil Mullings was recruited as a linebacker turned running back. Michael Barrett, the dude that was a linebacker, he was a quarterback recruit turned into linebacker. You think Sherrone Moore is going to turn Michigan into like kind of what Ohio State is, just a bunch of 5-stars, and lose kind of what Harbaugh has built? Or are we just, we'll worry about that down the road?
That is interesting.
So think about what they did with McCarthy, where they didn't really, they basically molded him to their system. If Bryce Underwood is who they claim he is, which is essentially a unicorn, you're not doing your due diligence if you don't change your offense a little bit to suit him. Right. But I hope they don't. I hope they do change it a little bit. I mean, let's obviously open it up.
You got to throw a little bit.
Receivers, but you don't want to lose what we saw on Saturday, which is being the tougher team. There's something demoralizing about what they did on Saturday, and I've been worried about their toughness all year. But the video of them walking onto the field, I mean, Matt, you tweeted it out. It's like the coolest shot I've ever seen in my life.
It is.
When they finally go out to the shoe and it's just red everywhere, and they're going nuts, and the crowd is just booing the hell out of them. It's the coolest thing I've ever seen. Yep. But they know how to handle this rivalry now. Think of Ohio State. Ohio State was so much energy, like toward Michigan, the trash talking, the constant, pep assemblies that it looks like I'm seeing all over on Twitter the last few days, where they're talking about Michigan and beating Michigan. The seniors all claiming the reason they came back was beating Michigan. Like they psyched themselves out. You got Ryan Day on the sideline, nervous as a clam. You have the crowd that is like hushed, quiet because they're so nervous once it went to that second half. It's where they're at, where we were at, all those years in the 2010s.
Against
they're now experiencing that insurmountable mountain that you cannot climb. Right. So it just feels good, man. It's that you like people are like, oh well, you know, some season you guys won 7 games. If we weren't going to win a national championship this year with this squad, this was honestly maybe the best possible result.
Yep.
Arguably a shitty squad, but yeah, you still beat Ohio State, you still beat Michigan State, and you look back on the year and you go, that's a good year. We'll take that every year. It was a fun season now because they won that game. Now you remember, like you said, Davis Warren's a legend. You would think of Davis Warren kind of in a happy way now. Well, man, you weren't the best, but you did that for us.
I think also Mullings stamped himself with that one play. That was really the clincher where he bounced off the pile and had the big gain. I mean, that was the play of the year without a doubt. And back to your question, Matt, I get what you're saying, but I'll take the 5 stars in the skill positions. And you know, I think Sharon Moore, being a former lineman, he's going to continue that offensive lineman university mentality and run the ball as well. So I like where they're at right now.
I said a couple weeks ago that he got an F for his coaching resume. Because of that win, it's now up to a B. And why I'm confident in Sharon Moore now going forward, as soon as the game is over, he's pitching recruiting. The guy gets it. Recruiting, NIL, he's maybe at the forefront of all of college football. And that makes me feel good. And on top of that, he seems to be able to coach his teams in the big game. You know, 2-0 now versus Ohio State. They seem to have a really great edge to them walking into the horseshoe on Saturday. Like, I talk about how much I judge Michigan State from the Michigan game. And when you know it, they lost like basically every game after that. I saw all I needed to see from Ohio State going forward under the Ryan Day regime and all I need to see under Sharon Moore from how they handled that game. This is still a team that is tough. I can't wait to watch them next year. Just like that. One thing we got to address, I mean, Ryan Day. I liked Ryan Day. I'll be honest. I always got a kick out of the Lou Holtz thing. That really cracked me up. I don't know why. I didn't hate that like other people's did. But the 1,000-yard Tom Hanks, storming the beaches of Normandy, 1,000-yard stare that he had in that melee after the game.
He stood there.
You can't get that image out of your head. You can't get that image out of your head.
You can't.
He's done. Unless they win the national championship, I think he's done. And it's a shame, man. He's 47-1 against Big Ten outside of Michigan. Cannot beat Michigan, and it's taken years off his life. It looks like. What did you guys think of that 1,000-yard stare? Just watching that unfold in front of
I honestly think he was in shock. I think he has talked so much about how much this game means to him, how it's affected his family, how much energy he has put into this game. I think he was in complete shock and didn't know what to do. The press after, I don't know if you guys saw the clip of the presser. They were talking about that play where he called back-to-back timeouts. They called a timeout. They went back out there. They had 12 guys on the field. He tried to call a timeout again, and he basically explained it as he panicked. He was like, "We panicked," and it's like, you are not a first-time head coach. You're the head coach of Ohio State. Admitting that you panicked, even if thank you for being honest, but it's like you're basically admitting you're in over your head. If you're admitting you panicked in that moment. So to your point, Jared, I don't know how, even if they win a national championship, you can't fire the guy. But if they go out there and lose in their first playoff game with what happened against Michigan, I almost don't know how you keep him.
It'll probably be a road game too.
Right. Which is crazy because of how successful he's been against everyone else but Michigan.
Yeah. Jared, you talked about it before that, these coaches are human and, sometimes they make mistakes with clock management and all that. I think about myself, and I'm not going to pat myself on the back too much, but I was a fair athlete, but mentally I was totally into the game. I mean, I knew exactly what was going on to this day. I know what the hell's going on. How do the coaches, as we'll kind of move from Michigan, which we saw Day blew it there at the end, and then the Chicago Bears, an NFL coach, doesn't know what the hell he's doing at the end of a game.
It was unreal, and he got fired. I'm going to bring it back to that because I agree. We're moving past Ohio State, but let me just throw out one real quick thing on Ohio State that I loved. Jack Sawyer, he's getting clowned. I actually got a kick of what he was doing post-game. He had a couple great one-liners, and this is why it's just good banter, good athlete banter. He Michigan is calling him, Mason Graham's calling him an Ohio State, P word. I won't say it just because I swear enough on this podcast. And Jack Sawyer goes back, "You guys are done after this game. Your season's over." He was just somebody who realized I just went 0-4 against Michigan, and it just broke his brain. And in the famous Ryan Day video where he's yelling at some guy "They're not planting the flag again." It just was the funniest thing I've ever seen. And
the dude was having a meltdown. He was having a mental meltdown.
And Day's just standing there watching.
Day's just standing there watching.
And the best part,
it's bizarre.
So that video where he goes, "Your season's over." The Michigan just like finally is like, all right, we're done with this. Like we're going back to the locker room, and you can see in his face like he wants to keep going back and forth with Michigan.
He does.
Like he does like because the second that melee is over, now you're just sitting in the reality of 0-4 versus Michigan in your career.
Yeah.
But moving on to the line. Go ahead,
with that, yeah, we'll go to the Lions. It is crazy, Jack Sawyer. So he was a part of the, so like you said, 0-4 in his career against Michigan. That class that he was in, so that senior class, like you said, that came back this year to beat Michigan. If you guys remember, it would have been the 2021 class, the year after COVID. So after that COVID year when Michigan was in the dumps and Jim Harbaugh was basically about to be fired and we didn't know what was going to happen. Michigan was in a bad spot. Ohio State's class with Jack Sawyer had like 12 5-stars at the time. It was one of the best recruiting classes ever.
Right.
0-4 against Michigan.
Unreal.
It's bizarre how things play out.
But
we love it. We love it. And yeah, we love the Lions too. Hadn't won a game on Thanksgiving in 7 years. It was always crazy to see that. And we saw it plenty of times in that game. And they did everything they could to try and lose that game. I mean, it was almost starting to go back to same old Lions territory with that second half. Because the first half, I mean, they should have been up 2-3 scores going into halftime. I don't know. They just
swung the game.
And I was going to say that if Gibbs scores on that play before halftime, I think they do end up walking away with the game.
Over. Yeah.
That completely flipped momentum and gave the Bears a chance. So, I mean, they got the win. That's what's most important. I think the big story that's starting to pile up are the injuries. I mean, we've been talking about the last few weeks. I mean, but hey, got the win on Thanksgiving.
It's getting out of control with the injuries.
Think of that. Here's what I'll say about the injuries. They are stacking up. This culture, I mean, it's the NFL. Every team has injuries and every team has depth for the most part. Yeah. Obviously there are certain injuries where if you keep happening, you can't overcome it. But to me, this Lions team, it just seems like everybody's rowing the boat, and the belief that they're going to win every game, the vibes are incredibly high. Where you look at a place like the Chicago Bears, where it's like, man, they think they're going to lose every game they take the field. Like, I really think we're going to keep going off without a hitch, as long as Jared Goff doesn't go down, or Amon-Ra or Gibbs. We already lost Hutchinson, and it didn't matter. Right. Obviously, it does matter, but you know what I'm saying. They're still winning ball games. So I really think that's where this team is at right now. It's just going to keep reloading. You pray to God that these injuries don't keep happening. But that's the NFL.
Yeah. What's more important, because we've talked about it before, trying to get that home field advantage.
You have to get home field.
I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with that.
I think it's a 2-team race, Eagles and Lions, and I think whoever has home field wins that game.
What's more important, though, is to get healthy.
We know the Ford Field advantage. Right. We know Lincoln. You do not want to go to Lincoln Financial Field in the playoffs. It's brutal. True. Night game. Crowd's going to be on fire. You need to have a home game.
And part of that, too, is getting that first-round bye. Sometimes you don't want that first-round bye because it might kill your momentum. You see teams, they get that week off into the playoffs, and then they lose all sort of momentum. I think the Lions need that at this point. They need an extra week off, because also if they could somehow have that number 1 seed wrapped up before the last game of the season, they might be able to rest a few guys. I don't know if they'll have it wrapped up by then.
Time. Yeah, it goes hand in hand. You really don't think that's a big deal, Ted?
No, I do think it's a big deal, and I guess I was just thinking of it in the fact that they need to be healthy. That's more important to me than the home field, because they've shown they can win on the road. But I get what you're saying. If they got to go to Philadelphia, and who knows what kind of weather it's going to be, that could be really tough. But,
I'm not saying they're dead, but man, that does not sound fun to me.
Yeah.
I do think kind of what you were saying. The big one, you don't want any more injuries on defense. You don't want any more guys going down. But if the offense can stay healthy, I think I feel good about where they're at. They'll plug guys in. They signed Jamal Adams this week. That. He's
maybe going to play linebacker. I saw it.
Yeah, he's practicing with the linebackers. He's definitely past his prime, but he is a former Pro Bowler. So, I mean, who knows? He can make an impact. As long as, like you said, Gibbs, Montgomery, obviously the big one is Jared Goff. Jared Goff can't go down. As long as the offense is intact, Ben Johnson and Jared Goff, I think they'd be able to figure some stuff out. Anzalone, he's going to be back, so that'll be big. And like he said, when he got hurt, he'll have fresh legs.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know if he's gonna have to
It
play.
wasn't the worst thing in the
world,
world, really. Yeah.
Right. Well,
So,
their schedule doesn't get really any easier. I mean, they do have the Packers at home, but they still have Minnesota. They got Chicago back in Chicago. They got the Bills. And then they got the 49ers who have shown they're beatable. Right.
Right. It's going to be tough. But
yeah.
I really do put it all in
lead.
that 1 seed. Go ahead.
Yeah. They've got a 1-game lead on the Eagles, so that helps.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can't think that they can't slip up anymore. But yeah, I think the 1 seed is a big deal if they can get the week off and then have home field. But
all right, you talked me into it. Let's get the home field. I'll be happy, and then rest them.
Real quick about that final play that ended up being Eberflus's last play he ever coached.
Yeah.
Do you not put it on Caleb Williams? What was Caleb Williams doing?
Right.
It almost seemed like he didn't understand what the situation was. They had one timeout. They were going to get to the line, run a quick play. No matter what, they could always burn that timeout after that play.
So far, so good. I have no problem.
So they get to the line. He calls a play. They get to the line. And then Williams is like analyzing the defense for what seemed like another 10 seconds.
Yep.
That is the real issue. And and you could argue don't put a rookie quarterback in that situation. But to me, it made sense what they were doing in real time. I wasn't going, call timeout. I was when the clock dwindled down, but not originally.
When it got to 15 seconds, coach should have called timeout, period. You still got time to run a play to the sidelines or whatever and kick the field goal or try.
He's probably still fired if that happens, to be honest.
Yeah. When you could tell Caleb Williams was like, didn't know what was going on, that's where the coach should have been like, all right, timeout. Let's take a second. Because then, Caleb Williams, he said he checked down to a different play. So
why is he checking plays?
Right. Trying to get in field goal range, I guess. But no, I mean, it was going to happen probably anyway that they were going to fire Eberflus, but they just got it done sooner rather than later. And let's hope they don't snag Ben Johnson, because if Ben Johnson went there with Caleb Williams, that could be a decent little duo there.
Caleb Williams seems to have kind of weathered the storm. In the first 5, 6, 7 weeks, he really was kind of struggling. Then they fired their offensive coordinator. I mentioned on the podcast, he went and spoke to the team, which I thought spoke volumes about him. I didn't think he would do that. And basically said it's on me that this guy got fired. And since then, he's been playing well. I think he's going to be a good quarterback in this league, in my opinion. 3 touchdowns against the Lions. I thought he played pretty well on Thanksgiving. But Lions, I mean, it's another big game against the Packers. It's a shame when we have this damn good team and we could use a little bit of breathing room. The NFC North is just damn good. I mean, the Vikings win in 2. Packers are damn good. Bears are honestly the best 4-win team in the league. It's been a fun regular season. And you laid out the schedule. It's going to be awesome to see it play out down the stretch.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Well, get healthy, boys. And you guys got any comments about this whole Jahmyr Gibbs photo gate thing in front of the whiteboard? Did you see that?
I don't even know what this is. I've been hearing about it. What is it?
He posted like an Instagram photo in front of their playboard, wasn't it, Matt? Is that what you would call it?
It was like their playbooks and in just like strategy and stuff like that. It was
play designations.
Right. It's probably some of their signals and stuff like that. And I mean, I don't really make anything of it except that,
it's dumb.
Kid, it's dumb. He probably Coach Campbell or whoever went and told him like, hey, don't do stupid stuff like this. I mean, you see players going on like IG Live in the locker room after a win, and then like a coach says something ridiculous, and then everyone's getting in trouble or whatever. It's like, just don't do stupid stuff like that. But I did see Campbell said like, hey, they can have all of our signs if they want. We're still going to beat them. It doesn't matter. Right. So I mean, like, he's obviously trying to poo-poo it, but
and they caught it. And I would assume that, I mean, it's probably sucks. They're either going to have to scratch all those plays or change their signals. So it's probably not great, but it's not a huge deal. No. One thing I want to throw out before we maybe wrap it. This is college football. I'm sorry, I should have brought it up a second ago. It's real quick. Did you guys see James Franklin and Penn State, the end of that Maryland versus Penn State game?
Yeah.
So, okay. So they put in there. So basically what James Franklin did, 2 seconds left on the clock, 4th and 12, like 25-yard line. They throw it to the end zone and they score as time expires. He goes in the post-game presser and says, hey, when my 3 and 4s get in, like, they deserve to play. I agree with that. When the 3 and 4s get in, hell yeah. Let's play football. Let's not dwindle the clock out. These guys deserve to play. And everybody was loving what he said. And when it kind of struck a chord with me. I respect the thought of what he said, but there is a line. 4th and 12, 2 seconds left. You should not be gunning it to the end zone. Those guys had the opportunity to play. They had the opportunity to play for those 10 minutes before that. You don't need to take a shot to the end zone with 2 seconds left to just add salt to the wound and score. What did you guys think? That really chapped my ass. Here's the thing with James Franklin, my least favorite coach in the entire
right. Yep.
Remember the MSU, the big time MSU upset that when MSU upset Penn State at Spartan Stadium, and Penn State had a few players walking off the field and they didn't shake hands, and he made a big thing of it, sprinted down the sidelines, yell at them, go shake hands. Basically did that for his own publicity. Dude, if you're a real coach, you see that happening, you make a note of it. We are running you guys ragged as a team as soon as we get to practice on Sunday, or you're reaming them in the locker room. Doing this whole for show, sprint down the sideline, run them back in, have them shake hands. What is the purpose of that? You didn't prove a point to anybody. You look like an idiot. What did you guys think of that? Again, I appreciate the sentiment of letting these 3s and 4s play, but 4th and 12, 2 seconds left, you're gunning it to the end zone to score. I mean, what the hell?
It's a kneel down. That's pure and simple. You kneel it down. I don't care if they're 3 and 4s. You watch basketball when guys come off the bench with 30 seconds to go and the game's over. They just hold the ball.
Dribble it out. Right.
Dribble it out.
But in the minute 30 before that, I'm fine with the 12 man on the bench gunning 3s.
Well, for
Steven
sure.
Izzo.
2 seconds to go. That's nonsense.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm not a James Franklin fan at all, but it was when I saw the presser clip, I was like, oh, actually something he's saying that I can get on board with, because I've always said that when you put the backups in, think about if you were in that place, if you walked on to Michigan and you happen to get into a game in a complete blowout, I'm going to be telling the coach, throw me the ball. This is my chance to play. I'm a 3rd, 4th stringer, walk on or whatever. Like, I want yards. I want to play. So yes, that's part of it. But when it's a 4th down and it's an obvious kneel down situation, that probably should be where you just take the knee, because part of it. So Loxley, Maryland's coach, in the handshake after the game, he was, giving James Franklin all his feelings, about the whole situation. They had a little moment there or whatever. So that's where it all came from. And, it kind of goes along with Ohio State. If you remember last week against Indiana, people have been saying,
exactly,
you're getting mad at Michigan for planting the flag. Well, last week against Indiana, you guys could have taken a knee from the 2. You not only ran the ball in the end zone, you did a fake kneel down play and then ran into the end zone. So it was like, different situation, but it's like, you're getting mad at Michigan for planting the flag, but you did this against Indiana. So what are you talking about?
No, I'm so glad you brought that up, Matt. You literally took the words. Ohio State in that exact situation was next to my list, and I had it headlined on my notes: bullies. Ohio State, Penn State are bullies. That's why it's good that a program like Michigan has come around. Without Michigan, these teams are they're Will Howard putting out the cigarette and taunting Coach Signetti. Damn good coach. That's what happens when you don't have Michigan to pound the rock on you 30 straight times. So that's what makes me happy. It's like Michigan State fans, whoever, Indiana fans, you should be rooting on the Michigan Wolverines. I think everybody was. They're bullies, man. They bully the Rutgers. They bully the Marylands. They bully the Indianas. When Michigan comes and out-physicals them, there's no bullying being done. I just loved it. That's a great point, Matt. Exactly right.
Yeah, I forgot all about that, but you're right on. Well, we've had some good conversation here, fellas, and we're not done yet. We have a fun interview coming up here with Ethan Quinn, Corunna proud guy, assistant coach at Lamar University, right after this.
All right, we are now joined by a special guest, one of my good buddies, Ethan Quinn. You've been all around the world pretty much in the coaching ranks, but currently you're an assistant coach at Lamar University. First off, just welcome to the show. How are we feeling?
I appreciate it. I'm feeling pretty good. It's good to be get a little bit of recognition from you guys on the 3-Point Pod. Obviously, Corunna ties. Been around your family my whole entire life, so this is a really cool opportunity for me. And also get Lamar University, however much exposure we can get back up north.
I'm not sure we'll swing any recruits your way, but we'll get a few views for you. So I want to start with, you've had a fascinating journey. I mean, a lot of hard work has gone into it. Can you kind of give our listeners kind of the Cliff Notes version? I mean, you've been at, you've worked for the Minnesota Timberwolves. You've been a manager at Minnesota University. Obviously, you grad coach at Madonna. Can you kind of go through your journey and what's led you to Lamar?
Yeah, I'll Cliff Notes it for you. So I obviously just went to school at the University of Minnesota, Big Ten program in Minneapolis, professional sports opportunities everywhere. So I started with the Gopher football program, figured out pretty quick that wasn't exactly where I wanted to be. So I switched it over to basketball for 1 year. Got a ton out of it. That was my junior year, and then COVID hit. And at the same time, I was working for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Basically, my in there was I worked in equipment. The guy said he'll hire me as a ball boy. So I started with like the mop on the floor, the kid you see running around the free throw line at NBA games. And the gist of it, in my second year, I worked pretty hard, I would like to think. And my boss, Peter Warden, who's now at the Detroit Tigers, actually, let me start coming around for practice, get on the road, travel a little bit. And then he knows my boss. He worked with my boss, Coach Brooks, right now at like Texas A&M and Kentucky. So I did a year as a GA at Madonna because I couldn't find anything right after school. And then Peter called me out of the blue kind of and was like, hey, I might have something for you down at Lamar University. I'm like, never heard of it, but it's a full-time job. So long story short, busted my butt for the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Minnesota Gopher basketball program. Worked for a really good coach, Noel Emenheiser at Madonna, who gave me put me onto a lot of game, helped me understand a lot of things. And then I just ended up at Lamar because my ties at the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Emenheiser is kind of almost a legendary coach, I would say, in the Michigan circles. I hear a lot of great things about him.
Yeah.
I know you're still young in your coaching journey, but what's maybe one thing that you'll for sure take from working with him for that year?
He was like just huge on what leadership is, and he was able to really define what leadership meant to him and apply that to the team in terms of everyone can be a leader in many different ways. Like everyone has to play a role, and in that role you can lead in different various fashions. And he was kind of what I consider a forward thinker. He applied this thing he called the flywheel of success. So long story short, good offense leads to good defense, leads to good offense, leads to good defense. Now, I was more detailed than that, but I think his flywheel of success is what he called it. And he took it from Amazon. I think I'm going to apply that whenever I get my chance to run a head team, which is actually kind of cool. At Madonna, they had, what we call the reserve team, which I got to head coach. So that was actually really cool to be able to be the voice in the huddle and in the locker room.
And from what I understand, and then I'll let you jump in, Ted. From what I understand, I mean, because of just gym availability, I mean, you had practices at like 5 a.m. a lot of the times and stuff like that. Are you still kind of grinding like that in your current role where it's early mornings, late nights, or has it maybe become a little bit easier for you, or are you still pounding the pavement like that?
I'm still pounding the pavement. I think that's just kind of my philosophy and current mantra right now. As a video coordinator, my goal was to just be as diligent and accurate with the data I was going to deliver to the coaches. And that meant long nights after games of what we call coding. So turnovers, pick and roll defense, it's all clickable, so to speak. So I could give the coach, here's everything you might want to see. And if you click that button, it's going to populate the video that correlates with that. So it was some really long nights as video coordinator. I still like to pride myself on really being the first one in the office just to stay ahead and be as prepared as possible, because that's what's got me to this point. So why would I change anything about that,
Amen, brother. I'll tell you that. I've talked about it many times. I've used it in my own career. It's all about the hustle. I mean, you got to hustle and you got to outwork everybody else. And obviously you've done that to this point, and you're going up step by step by step, which is the way to do it. I have a question on just in general. I remember you as a young fella in Jared's group there growing up at Corona, obviously a big sports fan. What made you go to the University of Minnesota?
So when I was in high school and it gets that time where you're like, where are you going to go to school? What are you going to study? What are you going to major in? Looking back on it, I should have just done a business major. I think I would have got just as far without it, but they had a sport management program, and it was like, all the little ranking places give it top 5 sport management program recognition. So I started to kind of look into that, and it's in Minneapolis. So you have Big Ten team, Big Ten program, huge campus, which I kind of wanted to go away from home and get a real college campus feel. And then you have Minneapolis, which had the 5 pro sports teams, MLS, NHL, MLB, NFL, and NBA. So I knew there was going to be a ton of opportunities. And then I actually took Josh Richardson on the visit. My mom and I went out there. We visited the campus, talked to enough people, and I'm like, this feels like the place to be. And then from there, I just kind of tried to seize every opportunity that came my way.
So what made you mentioned that you did football for a year. I mean, growing up, it seemed like football was probably your favorite sport.
Yeah.
What made you jump ship to basketball? What was the thought process there?
It wasn't, for whatever reason, I just didn't enjoy it very much. And when I started to work basketball, it was a much closer community. Like, every single guy in the locker room and every single coach knew my name, knew where I was from.
Right.
And I knew all their names too. In football, it's so many people that I think you can kind of get lost in the shuffle. So I wasn't a huge fan of that. And also there was a little part of me, I was a decent high school football player. So when I'm out there watching them practice, they're Big Ten. They're much better than me. But there's always that little small part of me that's like, man, I want to be out there. You know, when I came to basketball, I knew like, hey, I got no business playing with these dudes.
Right.
So.
I'm glad Jared asked that question because I had in my notes here. Actually, I did a little homework today and called up your some of your huddle highlights from high school. Man, you're better than I remember, man. That was pretty sweet. Do you miss football at all? I mean, obviously you didn't go on to play it, but after you found out I'm not going to play anymore, how much do you miss it?
Man, I miss playing it, but I think it's fun that because growing up, football was truly my favorite sport.
Right.
And I love basketball. Basketball is also one of my favorite sports. But being able to be just purely a fan of football has done a lot for me basketball is an easy job. I love what I do, but it's still work at the very end of the day. Right. Where football, I can be a pure fan. So I don't miss it in terms of being around it and working it. I like just being able to say like, oh, we can't run the ball. That's what's wrong with us, just being a regular fan.
What now that you've been there, is this now your second year at Lamar? No, it's your first year. Well,
at Lamar it'll be my third because I came down here after 1 year as a GA, then it was 2 years as video coordinator, and then Coach Mikhail McLean, he left for Kentucky. He got one of the assistant spots at Kentucky, which opened up, an assistant coaching spot here, and Coach Brooks decided to move me up. So third year, first as an assistant coach.
Gotcha. So Coach Brooks came there in 2021, correct?
Yeah.
Previously, he played there, I think, in the 80s is what I was reading. Kind of an old school guy, it seems like. What have you learned from him? We talked about your coach at Madonna. What have you learned from Coach Brooks?
So Coach Emenheiser at Madonna was a big numbers guy and analytics guy, and there's a tremendous amount of value in data and analytics.
Right.
Coach Brooks is old school in that if you're not playing hard, there's not one number you can put in front of him that's going to sway him. You need to play hard, and that's kind of the end of the discussion. Now, he obviously uses data and analytics, but he coaches with obviously what a lot of guys call just feel. Like, I know what's supposed to be happening right now, and this is how it needs to be done. And if it's not going to be done that way, might be a 22 or a 30-second sprint coming your way.
So I know you guys are only 3 games into the year, and you have a big kind of invitational coming up in Akron this upcoming weekend. What can you tell us about your squad, and what are maybe some of your guys' goals this year? Yeah,
definitely goals is always going to be – so the first year, which I wasn't on staff, we went from 2 wins to 9 wins in the second season, from 9 to 19 last season, made it to the conference semifinal, and lost to the eventual champion McNeese, who played Gonzaga in the tournament. So I think the goal this year is to come closer to winning the conference championship, whether it be in the regular season or the tournament or both. I think our squad is a couple JUCO guys, a couple transfers, University of North Texas transfer, Division II transfer. So we're kind of piecing together our identity right now and what it needs to be, which is going to be what we call 100 defense, full court press, getting guys to play at the pace we need them to play with. Every single possession is big for us right now. And just really honing in our identity because we have the talent, and I think our schedule is a little bit tougher this year. So more talent doesn't always necessarily translate to more wins. We gotta play really tough and smart.
A big topic of debate, it feels like every year when Selection Sunday rolls around, is how mid-majors, usually it's the conference champion, the conference tournament champion that gets to go to the tournament rather than the conference champion in the regular season. Do you have a preference? Are you okay with that rule, or how do you view that rule? Would you like to see it changed?
I don't know. I guess that's a good question. I haven't really thought about it too much. I don't mind it being who wins the tournament because that really puts a lot of pressure and like intensity and a little bit of animosity into those games where like you can win the regular season, you can keep that, but it's who's playing the best right now. So you get to hang a banner for a regular season championship, which is always awesome, and likely at a level like ours, you'll be in the NIT or some form of postseason play. You'll still be able to be in, but I think it's kind of cool that this is what it comes down to. And if you don't win this game or these 2 or 3, you got to win in the tournament. That was like Michigan a couple years ago when their plane hits the tarmac or whatever, then they play in their practice jerseys and boom.
Yeah. It's all about who's playing well at the right time, which I can appreciate that.
Yeah, it's kind of like a first level of March Madness, if you want to call it that,
Yeah.
to get to the dance. As an assistant coach at a D1 school, Ethan, obviously recruiting is a big thing that you got to be involved in, I would think. You're a young guy, you can relate to the kids. Do you find that to be your strength? And you also obviously have a good personality, but what's the key to successful recruiting?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually, we kind of look at it as a team approach, but I was kind of the lead. I want to recruit Christian Thomas out of C.E. King High School, which is outside of Houston. Definitely got to be relatable and also push the message that your head coach wants to push, being on the same page with him. So if a player gets to campus, everybody's on the same page moving forward. I can't speak too much to being a brilliant recruiter because this is kind of my first season in the role. So I'm kind of learning the ropes and understanding a lot of it is relationships. This kid's really good at basketball, but does he fit our style of play? Will he fit in at Lamar University? Will he fit in at Beaumont? Will he align with the way Coach Brooks wants us to play? And if I know the people kind of in his circle and they trust me and I trust them, then you can make something happen. But it's a lot more that goes into recruiting than, just the person who's looking at rivals.com knows. That's
sure.
What
I do.
Well, yeah.
This is an off-the-wall question. You obviously played basketball. Let's put your coaching hat on. What would you, if you were grading yourself as a player and you were coaching yourself, let's say you were a junior on your team, what would you say you did well? If you're given a report, what would you say you should have worked on? What's your scouting report of yourself? What do you think you could have improved on if you were coaching yourself?
If I had to give the scouting report, I would be a short closeout. I was not a very good shooter. I was probably a driver to facilitator is what we call him. I would drive and kind of look to pass, glue guy. He's going to try and rebound. Not a great scorer, but he's going to play hard. That's what I will do. I'll play hard.
How about I got another question for you?
Yeah.
In today's day and age of college sports, how are you guys dealing with the NIL down there? I mean, do you have an NIL coordinator? Is this handled by the coaching staff? Tell us a little bit about that.
So it kind of ranges. Obviously, when you think of a school like University of Michigan or Kentucky or North Carolina, they're going to have staff built in, where they might have a general manager or someone that can deal with NIL acquisitions and maintaining those relationships and allocating the money almost like an NBA team, like deciding who gets what. At our level, you'll find some teams with NIL money and you kind of maybe got to be more selective about who's getting it, if everybody gets the same amount. So it's a pretty delicate situation from team to team because it can cause a lot of
rifts. I would guess
rifts between people. Yeah, if someone's getting money and I'm not, and I'm playing more than them, that can cause problems. But within our staff, I think Coach Brooks, I think, handles most of those conversations and stuff like that, and keeps us all informed about what we're doing moving forward with stuff like that.
You mentioned earlier, obviously, you have aspirations to be a head coach one day. Is there certain coaches or certain offenses or just programs in general that you really idolize and are trying to maybe learn some more from? Obviously, you learn from Lamar. Yeah. Maybe a UConn or somebody else out there. Who else do you like to watch?
So I like to. I mean, really, what I do. We have a scout rotation. So between Coach Harrell and Coach Moore, the other two assistants who are really good and have helped me a ton throughout the transition from video to assistant coaching, you get put on a scout. So I have the Akron scout. So I'm just watching as much film as possible on Akron, and I'm going to steal maybe one or two things from them. And then whoever else we play this conference season, I'm going to steal some stuff from them. And then obviously when I was a video coordinator, I put together a pretty comprehensive playbook that we had for the last 2 years. So being able to maybe take some stuff Coach Brooks has run here at Lamar, and then obviously what Coach Emmenheiser was running at Madonna, he ran really good stuff, 5-out motion-based. We're motion-based here too, but not quite 5-out pass and cut. There's some pick and roll involved with it, trying to get the high-low and stuff like that. So I think just picking up anything I really like as I go along in my career will be
putting together your own kind of Michigan manifesto almost.
Yeah. Michigan manifesto. Beeline, they always talk about Beeline in the business about having that intricate offense and all that kind of stuff. But
you're down there in Texas, obviously, and football, it reigns supreme down there. How are you finding the support there for the basketball program?
So the support for the basketball and football program is really, really good. I think for a long time they didn't have a football program here, so it was a basketball school. And you talked about Coach Brooks played here. Like if you looked up in the gym, There's 10 banners, I think 6 NCAA tournament and 4 NIT. Coach Brooks was involved in 7 of those, 7 of those from the late 70s to mid 80s. So I think it was a basketball school for a really long time, then kind of laid dormant for a while, maybe a couple appearances in postseason every so long. But I think the support for basketball is bubbling up as we begin to kind of turn this thing around, and it's ready. After a couple big wins, I think the support is going to be unmatched.
So one of the games I noticed on your schedule was Texas Tech.
Mm-hmm.
Is that one that you guys definitely circle? I'm not sure how close you necessarily are to Texas Tech, but I imagine anytime you get to play a Power 4 school that's a Texas school, there's got to be a little extra blood in there, I would think.
Yeah, we actually played at Texas A&M, which is pretty close in proximity. It's a couple hours north of Houston, and we're just an hour east of Houston near the Louisiana border. So A&M was a good one, and Coach Brooks actually worked with Coach Buzz Williams at Texas A&M back in the day when Billy Gillespie was the head coach. Yeah. So there was a little bit of that involved too, and they get along and obviously respect each other. But Texas A&M was a really good team. They were one of the best rebounding teams in the country. And we went in there with a game plan, and we executed it, but they just kind of hit some shots early, got up on us. That made it tough to come back. But Texas Tech will be a big one too, right before Christmas. Try and get the guys ready to go before they get to go home, maybe for a little bit of a break.
Rick Wesley's a part of this same podcast, and obviously he made a big name for himself over at Grand Valley State at the Division II level as a head coach there in their Hall of Fame, all that stuff that goes with that. You've made, like I said, made steps up so far to where you're at right now as an assistant in D1. What's the ultimate goal for you, Ethan? A head coach at any level collegiately, or would you like to stay in D1?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I try not to box myself in. I've got to this point because of the opportunities I've taken when they were given to me. The absolute dream, I'll tell you right now, would be, win an NBA championship as the GM of the Detroit Pistons. That would be the end all be all.
Please do that for us. Please.
Yeah.
Do it.
And as I think about it, like Brad Stevens kind of ascended the ranks, was the head coach of Butler, made that a really good program, then got into the coaching for the NBA, then ascended to the front office NBA. If I could map it out and write my story, it would probably be something similar to that right now, but I'm not opposed to anything. And you got to think about location, support from the administration, whether it's a Division I, II, or III. Is it a place where you can go be successful?
Kind of a follow up on that one is you worked in the NBA and now D1 college. What's the biggest difference that you see?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the biggest difference is obviously, there's a lot. You'll have to scratch that part. Let me think about this one. Yeah, it's really like, all right. In the NBA, it is kind of a player-led organization, and the players kind of dictate the direction and leadership styles. Like you see a guy, LeBron's not the rule, but you see the players kind of determine a lot of what happens within a team. Now, coaches obviously influence them and are running their stuff. But I think at college basketball, and it's kind of maybe changing now with the NIL era, but at our level, I think the coaches still are able to have more of a grasp on the direction and
I get
stuff like that of the players,
Yeah, and they're freaking making millions of dollars on top of that. That's a big difference.
Like sometimes it can be tough to get on those NBA guys, but they're still kids in college, and that's a big part. You can still mold them a little bit. They're grown men, and they go to class and they go to work and practice and everything, but I still feel like you can influence them a little bit.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Sure. What I got one more for you, and this is, like Ted just laid out. You're obviously climbing the ranks, doing it the right way. If you had to give advice to somebody who wants to aspire to be a college coach, what advice would you give them? Let's say a high schooler.
Yeah, I'm flattered to even be able to answer that question because I'm still just so grateful for me being in this position, and I try not to take it for granted because it is a business that you can be out of a job quick with. But I would just say, like, any opportunity you are given, whether it's wiping the floor like I did for any type of level, wipe the floor as best as you possibly can. Be so good at it that it grabs people's attention. And then I would say don't get caught up in the levels. When I was looking for a GA spot, I sent out the 300 whatever emails to Division I programs.
Wow.
Most of them don't get back to you. Some of them will say, sorry, we got nothing.
Yeah.
And then so I just knew I wanted to stay in the business. So I went to go be a GA at the NAI with Noel Emmenheiser and Madonna. And that was one of the better things that could have happened to me because he was a phenomenal coach. And Adam Kerfoot, the assistant over there, phenomenal coach. And they both have still connections in the business. So it would just be whatever opportunity presents itself, make the absolute most you can of it.
I got one more actually. Now I'm thinking about
Yeah,
it.
keep them coming.
So you guys got some big games coming up. What is how can people watch it? I know you're trying to get some contingent of people to get there to Akron to watch some games. Let's say we can't. How are people able to watch Lamar basketball?
If my mom watches through Hulu, it's the ESPN Plus subscription. I think it's like $4.99 more a month. Every single game we play is on ESPN Plus, so that's pretty accessible and affordable for a lot of people.
Yeah, a good way to do it. I got one comment really, just that we like to butter the bread of Corunna Cavaliers, and you're a proud Corunna Cavalier, but we're proud of you, man, for making it, for continuing to go through the ranks. I mean, just don't forget us. Is this your first podcast appearance with real professionals like Jared and I?
Yes, I won't count the Fats and Yo-Yo Ball 44 ones I've done before, but yeah, this is the first official one, and I seriously appreciate it, and obviously we'll never forget, John Fattel, Mr. Fattel, Coach Fattel was such a huge influence. Coach Brooks actually asked me, how did I know I wanted to get into sports and basketball? And I said, Mr. Fattel was just such a huge influence for me when I was just a little kid and I was playing basketball, and he coached us hard and he taught us the way to do it and to do it the right way. And I know there's probably a lot of youth basketball coaches that don't know what they're doing.
Right.
I'll, forever be grateful and indebted to Mr. Fattel for teaching me how to do it the right way and kind of inspiring me. Yeah,
I definitely, as I look back on that, and I definitely took that for granted, for sure. And especially as I've gotten older, you realize 99.9% of these youth coaches are, like you said, they're clueless.
Yeah.
And you just took it. I took it for granted in a sense, because of my dad and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, as Ted said, keep it rolling. Obviously, we're all proud of you, and we'll be watching Lamar basketball. Thanks for joining us on 3.5.
Good deal. Appreciate you guys. Seriously, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. All right, Matt, it's too bad you weren't able to join us on that conversation. We had a lot of fun with Ethan. It looks like he's an up-and-comer with a big future in basketball, whether it's in college or whether it's on into the NBA, but good catching up with E there. And, man, I tell you what, his future looks really good. We'll definitely be watching Lamar basketball this year and see if they can maybe make the tournament, right?
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't that be cool to see? That's every mid-major's dream, is to get that chance at the tournament and become a Cinderella. I mean, he's always been a hard worker, so it's cool to see how he's kind of been climbing the ranks.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, let's just say, for whatever reason, this is the last stop. I mean, you were a college assistant coach. Pretty damn cool.
Making a living, man.
Exactly. Making a living coaching basketball.
Making a living doing it. And I mean, Lamar makes the tournament sometimes. So, I mean, a pretty solid program. So, Jared, are you going to, if he makes it to Kansas?
They need to be in the regional, in Indiana.
No. If he makes it as a head coach to a Kansas, wherever, somewhere big, Duke, UNC,
right.
You're going to be hitting him up and being like, hey, you need a tape coordinator. Hey, you need some.
Oh, hell yeah. I'd do anything. I could be the media manager.
He'll be lucky to get tickets to the game. Are you kidding me?
Right. Yeah. I was trying to go to their game. They had a tournament in Akron actually last weekend, but with state finals, it's our busiest week of the year. I couldn't make it. So I was kind of bummed, but it's cool to follow them along. I definitely am going to keep tabs on Lamar basketball. And like you said, Ted, just a very fun interview. And we wish them the best of luck rest of the year.
Absolutely. Well, good show, guys. A lot to get off our chest with the whole Durand controversy, the Michigan Glow. I love it. And we'll get together again next week. We want to thank the good folks at Memorial Healthcare's Wellness Center. More info can be found online at memorialhealthcare.org and the socials at Memorial Healthcare Wellness Center. We also want to thank ALS of Michigan, AZee Branding Solutions, Jacobs Insurance Agency, Kori Shook and Associates Real Estate Services, Nelson House Funeral Homes, Rivals Taphouse and Grille, Success Group Mortgage and Servicing, and the Shiawassee County Fair. Thanks again to Ethan Quinn for being a part of the podcast. And our first Z92.5 basketball game of the week, Joe and Casey will be courtside Friday, December 6th, this Friday, Goodrich at Owasso. So tune into that one on the radio if you can't make it to the game. Peace and love, everybody. Be kind. Thanks for listening.